My career sucks.
Sex just isn't the same.
What's my purpose?
Where did this fat come from?
My relationship is killing me.
I'll never be happy.
My debt is piling up. I'll never find love. Why can't I be like other gay guys? Hey guys, it's time to get a grip, stop whining, make a bold move, and do something amazing with your 40-plus gay life. Let's get to the show with your Tell It Like It Is host, Rick Clemons, who does his best to never act like a dick or a diva unless you act like one first.
Hey gentlemen, welcome to another episode of 40-plus Gay Men Gay Talk, and it's Pride. It is Pride season, and it may be a tougher Pride season than we maybe have been experienced lately, but let's all keep the faith and move forward because amazing things can happen even in the most devastating, tragic, chaotic things that happen around us in our world. And for many of us 40 plus, I know you're going to remember this as soon as I say it. You probably can remember exactly where you were and what you were doing on September 11th, 2001. I'm getting chills because I remember I was sitting in my brand new townhouse, newly divorced when all this was going down. And I actually remember picking up the phone and calling my ex-wife and saying, I know you're at work, but do you know what's going on right now? In those moments, there were amazing responders and survivors and people. Humanity was being humanity in that moment. Wish we could get back to that. That would be a lovely thing. And one of those beautiful humans is our guest today, Neil Adams. He has written a book, From the Pile. It is about one of the most heroic people that some of you may have heard his name before or not. I'm going to let him introduce who he wrote the book about. But it takes us on a walk from an individual who was living in poverty and then built a life of purpose and compassion while living with HIV, while struggling through his own stuff. And in that moment, he came to the rescue in so many ways at ground zero. And I'm excited to be talking with Neil Adams, the author of From the Pile, today about how humanity, gay culture, and all of this mixes together so that we can have the right kind of relationships and hear the stories that still need to be told. So, Neil, thank you for being here, man, and joining me on 40 Plus. I'm really excited to talk about all the stuff.
Thank you so much for having me, Rick. I really appreciate being here. Thank you.
And it's always good to kind of have a neighbor in the house, so to speak. You're not that far away from me in San
We're not
Fran.
too
I'm
far
halfway.
away. We're just up the state a little bit.
A little bit, a nice 3.5, 4-hour drive.
3.5, 4-hour drive, yeah.
So you mentioned before we got on here, you're also a guy in your 60s. Do you remember where you were when 9/11 was going down?
Oh, for sure. I was working for a publishing company at the time. Mm-hmm. And as was my habit, I usually get into work early. So I was at work by 6:37 in the morning because I like to beat traffic and get a parking spot. And I was in my office around 7 a.m. and I was talking to a colleague, friend of mine who worked remotely. And he said, oh my God, a plane just hit one of the Twin Towers. And then another one hit. And he said, we're at war. And he was, get home. No one's working today. At the time, I was living in Mill Valley, which is in Marin County. It's just north of San Francisco. Yep. And I thought, oh my God, I better get home because I didn't know if a plane was going to take out a bridge. Mm-hmm. And luckily that didn't happen, but I jet home. And like everyone was on the news, watching the news and just frozen by what was happening in our country that day. And it was devastating. And the book I wrote about Michael Dorian, who actually I wasn't talking to at that time. And I discovered later that he was actually down at ground zero. It wasn't called ground zero that day. It was called the Pile.
Yep.
And he rushed down there on that day to help with rescue efforts. And I was blown away by that, my old friend, and wanted to write his story. So Michael Dorian was his name, and was definitely a big hero. And his day was a lot harder than mine that day.
I'm sure. It's interesting because I was scheduled, well, I shouldn't say just I. My husband and I, a partner at the time, had scheduled a trip to New York City.
Ooh.
And we did go ahead and do that trip exactly 1 month to the day from 9/11. And I was unemployed. And so I
Oh,
was going to a trade show because
okay.
I'm like, hey, I'm gonna get back in the business somehow. And it was the International Hotel Restaurant Show. They decided to continue to have it. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going. I'm gonna go walk that floor and see if I can find somewhere to work. My now husband hadn't ever been to New York City, and it was one of those visits that nothing was quite right.
Yeah,
Nothing was quite right.
yeah, I bet. Well, it must have been surreal to be in New York at that time.
Very surreal. I mean, even so, we flew in, and the morning that we, I don't remember if we took a red eye. I think we did take a red eye. The morning that we landed was the morning another plane crashed.
Ugh,
It was like a month later, a plane crashed in Brooklyn or somewhere, like right out of, and so they thought it was all over again. And I remember I'd gotten up, I'd gotten all dressed up, ready to go over to the trade show. And I walked out the door of the hotel, and the bellman goes, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "I'm going across town." He goes, "You're gonna have to walk it because they're not doing any." I'm like, "What's going on now?" And he goes, "Well, plane crashed. I think it's related." It wasn't related. It was just a malfunction plane sort of thing.
yeah.
So I did. I walked from one side of the island to the other, basically, to get over to the Javits Center.
Wow.
And even that walk, was just surreal because there was nobody on the
There's
streets.
nobody on the streets. It was just desolate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We tried to go out to dinner, and everything was closing up by 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night. I'm like, this is weird. And we did go. By the time we got there, they were already calling it ground zero, of course.
Yeah.
And I remember walking through Chelsea and heading towards the financial district. And the closer we got, I couldn't even function, so to speak, because I'm like, we're actually walking. By then they had the walks around everything, so you could
Yeah.
walk around, and you're staring up at buildings with like soot and flags that were just shredded, and
Hmm.
there's just so much. And then a few years later we went back once the 9/11 memorial was there.
Yeah.
That was a whole nother experience too.
Yeah.
So what, based on what you wrote about and knowing Michael, what was the compelling thing you think that actually drove him, like, I gotta go be there, I gotta get down there?
Well, I'll back up a little bit. Michael was diagnosed with HIV when he was 16 years old. And
Wow.
that started because he was doing male prostitution as a teenager.
Okay.
He had a really rough upbringing. He had a really terrible mother. He had no father figure, really. And he was trying to get money so he could leave his home, even as a teenager. His older brother had done the same thing. His older brother had gotten into stealing cars as a way to get money so he could get away from his house. Michael tried to copy him in that. That didn't work out for him. But male prostitution was something he looked a lot older than he was as a teenager. And that's how he contracted HIV. So on that day, when the planes hit the towers, Michael, who had turned his life around, he graduated high school, he graduated college, he became a veterinary technician. He specialized in exotic animals because he loved animals. And he was the only one in his family who even graduated high school, let alone college. And but with that, he was, like I said, a veterinary technician, and he had scrubs, and he knew there
Mm.
was help was going to be needed down at the pile. And so he made his way down there, and he knew when he was in scrubs that they would just assume he was a medical
Yep.
professional. And so they let him through the barricades. They let him go on to the North Tower to help the firefighters, and he was down there for 24 hours. And I mean, he really wanted to help. And he knew at the time that he was immune compromised. He
Mm.
knew it could end his life, which it
Yep.
eventually did. But he wanted to help. Michael was a helper. He just said, like, this is my city. I can help. I'm probably not going to have a long life anyway, which is what he told me. So
Wow.
I might as well go down there and do what I can to save more lives. And that was his whole mindset. And when he was down there, again, they assumed he was a medical professional, but as he was talking to people and getting to know folks, they discovered that he was actually an animal technician. I like to joke the cat got
Mm.
out of the bag. And once they discovered that, they said, you shouldn't be here. You need to leave. Thank you for everything. But they asked him to leave after he'd been there for 24 hours.
Mm.
And what happened after that really helped his next journey, and we can talk about that in a bit.
But it's so fascinating to me to hear this person who, in their own world, is compromised in so many ways,
Mhm.
who had, back then we wouldn't even have been using these kind of words, self-awareness, had the self-awareness of here's what I can do, here's how I can be. And I had several friends who were firefighters and involved in the rescue operations and everything.
Yeah.
I remember talking to one of them, and he said there was never a moment of questioning
No.
whether I was going or not.
Yeah.
He goes, now I was a firefighter, so I knew I was going, but did I know what I was actually going to? Because I stood there, and he said our fire station was, I don't know the city well enough, but it was close enough to the financial district that when they walked out of their fire station, they could see the Twin Towers.
Hmm.
You can't not see them most of the time when you were in New York City at that point, right?
Yeah.
He goes, now remember when the first plane hit, we came out of the station and already sirens were going off, and we knew ours wasn't going off yet, but we assumed. And he goes, and then when the second plane hit, he goes, and our station was at the actual angle where we saw it go right into the building.
Oh, wow.
And he said there was a brief moment of, holy shit,
Yeah.
what am I involved in now? And he said, and that was it, because we go, we do what we're meant to do.
Yeah.
And I can't help but, as you've described what Michael did, that
As a
within each
civilian.
of us,
Yeah.
there's probably that piece. I mean, I've been involved in some things along the way, but I don't know, especially now at this age, I don't know that I'd go running in. I think I would. I think there would be certain cases where I'd be like, I don't care. This has to be done. There would be other cases I'm like, let somebody else who could go do this much better than I
Yeah.
could.
And I think most of us feel that way. I wouldn't have run down. I would have felt sympathy and wanted to do anything I could do to help. I
Right.
wanted to donate blood,
Mm-hmm.
which at the time I wasn't even allowed to do that because if you remember, we're of the same age, but
Yep.
gay men couldn't donate blood
Nope.
because maybe we had AIDS,
Yep.
and so we weren't even allowed to do that. And that was something I really wanted to do, just being 3,000 miles away, anything I could do to help. But Michael, who was a civilian, thought, I can help. I know I can get past any barricades and I can do all I can to help as many people and try to save as many lives as
Mm-hmm.
possible. And I know Michael wanted to stay there longer. He mentioned that several times. He said, I would have stayed longer if they hadn't asked me to leave. So.
Mm-hmm. So before we move on in more deeply into Michael's story and the things that you wrote about, what compelled you to say this story needs to be told and I'm the guy to tell it?
Well, this goes back to 1993 when I first met Michael.
Mm.
And when I met him, well, he picked me up. I had finished an acting tour and I was working a graveyard shift at a little pizza restaurant in the Upper West Side.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael stumbled in one night during a 2 a.m. rush, drunk, and with a friend of his, and we were crowded, and I was running around like crazy during the rush. And my friend who I was working the shift with said, "Hey, that guy's checking you out." And I thought, no one's checking me out. I'm running around like crazy. He said, "No, no, no, look at him." And I looked over, saw him, smiled. He smiled at me. I smiled at him. And make a long story short, we hit it off. We became friends. And as I got to know him, um, I thought his life was just fascinating to me. It was diametrically opposed to the way I was raised in my whole life. And I thought this guy's really fascinating. And I told him at the time, after I'd known him for about a year, I said, Michael, I'd really like to write your story. And he was into it. He was like, yeah, let's do it. I would love to tell my story. And so he started telling me a lot about his early life, how
Mm-hmm.
he got AIDS, how he got HIV, and his upbringing and everything. And he got to a few points in his life that he wasn't proud of, nor should he have been. And he said, you know what? I don't think I want to go through with this anymore. I'm just a little, not everything about me is great. And I thought, okay, I'll drop it. But I always kind of kept the idea in the back of my mind. And as we went through our friendship and we had our own ups and downs, and we actually had a split in our friendship for about 4 years.
Mm.
And it was during that break that 9/11 happened. And I, of course, wondered what happened to Michael, but
Right.
we weren't speaking at the time. I had we had gone through a whole big thing, and I sent him a really mean email just telling him to he was being unfair to me, and I don't
Mhm.
remember exactly what I said. I remember the intent, but I don't remember
Right.
exactly what I said. And we didn't speak for a while. And then after, around 2002 or so, we met up again, and that's when he told me that he was a first responder on 9/11, and we reconnected quickly. We were just missed each other, and just we had grown up, we had matured in our own friendship as well. And at that point, I thought, like, I'm really going to have to write his story at some point because now it's just taken on this whole dimension. But I didn't mention it to him at the time. I just kind of kept the idea in the back of my head. And as our friendship went on, and I witnessed a lot of the things that were going on in his life, with his relationships, with his health challenges, with his familial challenges, with his work challenges, and his own challenge of just wanting to, like, be in a happy relationship and have a home and be married and have kids, which is all he really wanted out of life. I still kept that, in the back of my mind. And as everything happened towards the end of his life, really towards the end of his life, I said, Mikey, I would really like to tell your story. Would that be okay with you? And he gave me his blessing to do that. So, and I knew his story. I knew how to tell it. So that's what I did.
So as he began to reveal even more about what happened and beyond, because I love that you already said this. There's the moment, okay, which we all can relate to, most of us who were awake and alive at that point in time. And then there's the things that started to happen beyond. So it was really interesting in my world. Again, I already mentioned I had a friend who was a firefighter, a few of his friends I kind of knew.
Yeah.
There was a young woman who I only met one time. Ironically, I met her at the trade show I already referenced that I was going to when my
At
husband and I
Javits.
went. And it was probably 3 years prior I met her because I got laid off from the software company I was working for. And so it would have been the last time I was at that trade show employed.
Okay.
And kind of met her, and I'm like, she's a big energy. I mean, Nina was big energy. She was a software salesperson, all that sort of stuff. Just
Type A.
absolutely beautiful, beautiful woman. She was friends with some friends that I worked with and all that stuff. We went out one night, and as you do in New York City, you went out and you partied, you had a good time. And moved from, I'm not sure I like this gal, to like, we could be sisters. I mean, I just felt that energy, right?
Yeah.
But that was it. That's the only time I met her. I get to the trade show, and it was like a graveyard, even in the Javits Center, because there were people there, but
Yeah.
nobody was coming to New York City.
Nobody was traveling. Yeah.
Nobody was. It was. The people were there were moments, Neil, that I was walking down the trade show aisles. I was like the only person on the aisle. I'm like, this again. So here's the eeriness of what happens post, right?
Yep.
And I see my old colleagues in the trade show booth, and I'm like, I'm going to go at least say hi.
Say
And
hi,
they're
yeah.
all like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm looking for a job. You sure you guys don't want me back? And they're like, oh no, we're being sold and all that stuff, which I knew that was all happening. So that's part of the reason I wasn't there. And then one of them turned to me and said, did you know Nina? I said, Nina, like the gal, I don't remember where she worked for. And they're like, yeah, her. I'm like, yeah, I remember her. And that's all they said. I said, why? And they said she was in the second tower.
Ugh.
And I'm like, okay, I would have never put that together, right? And for as little as I knew her, there was, even as I'm telling this, it's not as hard as it used to be to tell this story.
Yeah.
But there's a piece of my heart that's like, that energy got taken away.
Yeah.
Then 3 years, 4 years later, whatever, once the memorial was up, we're back in New York City. And I said, I'm going to go find her name.
Find her name.
And
Yeah.
I did find her
Okay.
name. And my husband stood there and he saw me, like, he goes, you hardly knew this girl. I said, I know, but just there's this essence of, that
The connection
knowing.
and just
Right.
yeah.
But that
I-
doesn't even begin to tell all the rest. There's so much more to, your knowing, Michael's story, all this. Like, what are some of the things, after effects that you start as you're writing the book, you're like, wow, the untold stories, the health impacts. I mean, I know Jon Stewart has been tremendous in his, stuff with,
Yes.
testifying and everything. But what are some of the things that you uncovered as you continued to write the story?
Um, well, I'll tell you, like you mentioned a few things because I remember around that time I got laid off too. Around that time, I mean, it was also around the time of the dot-com bust,
Yep. Yep.
which probably we were both victims of that.
Oh, yes. Yep.
And I was working in trade shows at the time, and we had a trade show in New York and a trade show in Chicago, and you know, I knew that no one was going to go to Chicago or pretty much travel right after that. And I knew I was going to get laid off. I knew my bosses got laid off. We all got laid off at the company. But I remember also at that time, because we were in San Francisco, and so there were news reports for people who were who got who unfortunately victims of 9/11,
Yep.
and one of them was a sister of the brother of a classmate of mine.
Mm.
And we had my 20-year reunion about 2 weeks after 9/11 that was also in San Francisco. And she came, and I was really glad she came. She was someone I'd known since grammar school. And I said, Darlene, I'm really glad you're here. I'm sorry to hear about your brother. Her brother was in the second tower too, and he had actually made it out, but the building had collapsed right after he got out. And so he didn't
Mm.
make it either. And stories like, there's so many stories like that too, just sort of like you think you've made it and you're free, and just devastating, just awful. There's so many stories like that.
I
And
know, and to be in the midst of that and writing around a individual experience
mhm.
with one person, and then I'm sure Michael had things that he brought up. And what is something you probably learned, not even just probably, what is something you learned that made you a better man from writing this, hearing his stories, makes you a better person?
I would think compassion, learn, being more compassionate, being more understanding of people, just trying to be understand what all there's so many different lives, and we're all different people, and just how we can help one another and just sort of like shake off whatever our differences are and just come together in times of crisis and know that we're all on this small planet together and wanting to help one another. I mean, there aren't a lot of people that really want to help one another, and just try to be a good friend, be a listener, and do what we can to help people through through their challenges and things. I mean, when I learned that about Michael, I, always just wanted to be a really good friend to him and help him through his challenges and his things. And anyone, I mean, those are the things, just listening, just
Mm-hmm.
how can I help? How can I help? What would make you feel better? Is there anything I can do? Um, like I said, just being is more of a compassionate person, really.
And that's something that obviously in these days and times,
Yeah,
compassion is almost like
it's
it's just
lacking.
gone. It's
It's gone.
almost extinct. It was
It's almost
interesting. We were in Costa Rica last week, and we went on a estuary tour
mhm.
back in, and to see, like, the wildlife and all this sort of stuff. And the number of times the guide said, well, this is what this is, but because of the poaching and everything, Costa Rica put up and sloths were one of them. Like, they no more, you can't hunt sloths. And there was
Yeah.
something else, one of the crocodile kind of species of crocodiles that we saw back in the estuary. It
Yeah.
was one that's on the extinction list as well. And as he was talking about all these things that are extinct, I had the thought of, yes, but what other things are extinct that we never would have put extinction on the list?
Yeah.
Humanity,
Humanity,
compassion,
compassion.
care, love,
Yeah.
seeing each other for who we truly are. I can't help but think, through the experience of, being a friend to Michael, number one, even, and in the times when it was tough, but then hearing his story and walking through with him, and knowing what kind of life he led.
Yeah, and it
It,
doesn't make any difference that he was gay. He was a human being,
mm-hmm,
and he had challenges, but it didn't make any difference, that, people are in trouble,
mm-hmm,
and we can help. If I can do something to help someone, I don't care if they're gay, straight, black, white, male, female. I don't care. If I see if I can help someone, and Michael was that type of person too. He was just always there to help anyone that he could. And I think that's something that I try to apply to my life too.
Okay, so you kind of walked into this. This is something that I have been wanting to talk about for. I do. You said you've listened to my podcast, so it's probably going to resonate a little bit. But I've been wanting to have this conversation for quite some time because, okay, I want to be good. I want to be compassionate. I want to understand other people. How do you keep that alive in your own self, Neil, when there's so many people around us that just don't want us to even have a voice?
You just have to dig in. You can't control people. You can't force them to do something they don't want to do. I mean, you just have to keep trying. I mean, the alternative is to give up.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to give up.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you've hit a dead end with someone that you want to have a relationship with, or then you move on. It's like sometimes you see someone who you want to have a connection with or want to have a discussion with. But if they're not seeing your way, or if their walls are so blockaded that they're not interested in listening to your point of view or some experience that you've had, and if someone's not going to listen to that, there's really not much you can do except to move on to someone else who is willing to listen to you and to have a conversation and maybe get to know you and learn all the things about your life and like you for who you are, no matter
Mm-hmm.
what your situation is.
I think I've learned most from these kind of conversations by addressing, let's be honest, this is not easy.
No.
We need to be having more conversations about how difficult it is to have difficult conversations in spaces where you feel threatened. The other person could feel threatened as well.
Yeah.
And what I find interesting about it, it was 2 years ago. Yeah, it had to have been just about 2 years ago, even though I worked with him last year. A really powerful guy came into my world. His name is Joshua Johnson.
Yep.
He's actually a journalist. He used to host an NPR show, and he came into my work helping speakers build their speaking business. And he goes, I'm going to go for a TED Talk. I'm going to go for a TEDx tryout. I'm like, cool. What do you want to talk about? And he goes, I want to talk about how to talk to people you dislike. I'm like, oh, that sounds really good. So we worked on that a little bit. We worked on the bigger format. And then he's like, okay, so what do I take from this and whittle down? So long story short, I helped him whittle it down. He did the audition. He got the talk in Chicago. He just did the expanded talk at TED this year.
Wow.
So
great.
he landed on the big stage, like
Good
the
for
big
him.
stage.
That's great.
And he did a version of the talk, basically navigating conversations with what he calls skilled objectivity in polarized times. I can't wait to see it. It's not released yet. I mean, I wanted to try to go, and then when I found, then when
send me the link.
Yes, I will. I will actually, for everybody listening, I'll put it. I mean, this is all about Neil and his book, but I'll try to. Hey, those of you who heard me mention this, here's the link to the guy that does the TED talk around this, because so much of what you just brought up, Neil, is about showcasing in the rubble, in this tragedy, in this space. The one thing I felt, it's so, I'm like, God, please don't tell us we have to have another tragedy like this, because we seem to be having tragedies and it isn't uniting us as a nation, for sure.
It's not uniting us.
So please don't tell me we have to go through a 9/11 all over again. But the one thing I felt, there was no us versus us.
No.
Through the 9/11 stuff.
Everyone was there. It was just human. We're all there to help. I mean, one of the wonderful things about it is that the people that came together for the rescue efforts throughout that entire time. Michael was there for a day, but I know restaurants were delivering food, and all the people that came together just to try to help. It didn't matter who you were. And and that was just really lovely to see that people, the humanity of the people that came together in that tragedy. And one of the things that you got me thinking about something about how we talk to people. And it's hard to find, like Michael was someone in my life. I have another friend in my life where we really have deep conversations. And Michael and I had so many deep conversations. Another friend of mine, we always seem to get into very deep conversations. I don't know that a lot of us have that many people in our lives that we have deep conversations with them, where we can just explore about issues and discuss, our lives, why we make decisions, how we can improve ourselves, things that are happening in our lives or the
Mhm.
challenges and people in relationships. Um, Having people that we can have those types of conversations with is really important. I know you do that kind of work, with your podcast and with your coaching
Well, it's
business.
it's critical right now.
Yeah,
Let's kind of roll back to, okay, the next big thing that really happened on a global front was the pandemic, right?
yeah,
Initially, and I remember, the banging of the pots and pans and everything in New York City and everything and all that. And then there was suddenly, like, there was started to be this divide. As soon as it started talking about vaccines and everything, it started to
yeah.
divide us as a humanity, right? And then it's like somebody has to be responsible for it. So it was the Chinese. Well, then we started seeing the racial stuff happening and everything. What I find so interesting and yet disappointing is, why does it take some of this stuff to draw us apart
Hmm.
and try to unite us simultaneously, even in our own community? To what you just said, deep conversations, there's such a hunger and a yearning
Hmm.
in the gay male community right now
Yeah,
for
big time.
connection,
For
not
connections.
just sexual connection.
No,
That's
just
easy to go get.
emotional connections. Yeah, sexual
Em-
connections are easy.
right,
Emotional connections.
right.
Yep.
Emotional connections where it's like, let's have a conversation.
Let's
Let's
have a
talk about
conversation.
what you're feeling.
Yeah. Or just like be my, be my friend, be my confidant. I just need someone that I can
Right.
trust, who I can look to for some support, who I can give support to. Finding those people in our lives
Mhm.
isn't easy.
No, no. And I think the more that we step into, and you've really been beautifully demonstrating this, like, I just wanted to get to the human side of the story. I wanted to showcase the humanity in this. I think it's time for us to all dial back our thoughts, our clocks, however you want it, whatever metaphor you want to use, to, we're all just humans.
We're all human.
We're all human,
Yep.
gay or straight, black or white,
Male or
obese or
female.
skinny,
Yep.
rich or poor. We're all human. In fact, when we were in Costa Rica, and I remember 3 years ago when we were in Costa Rica, kind of a completely different experience than this one. We were on a Vakaya vacation. For those of you who know Vakaya, it's a really well-known LGBTQ travel company. Beautiful property, 5-star Hilton Andaz property right on the peninsula. Everything you want, treated like kings and queens, right?
Yeah.
And then we'd go on the excursions, and I'm like, wait, this is a whole different look of Costa Rica. There's people living in poverty. There's people living very simply. And
Yeah.
I'd always heard about the simplicity of the Costa Rican people. So now roll forward to this past trip. A little bit different trip. We rented a very nice house for our family. First trip with our older adult children in a while. And yet, here's this beautiful home sequestered in this hillside area.
Hmm.
Yet, to get to and from town, which is only like not even a 10-minute walk down into central Tamarindo, we were passing humanity,
Yeah.
like living simplistically. Beautiful hotels and resorts around, but yet there was the realness of what some would probably go, oh my God, this is like a third world country. Not really. It's just they live a little bit different life.
Hmm.
The places we chose to eat was mostly, we want the ethnic, we want the true culture. There's what they call the sodas. For those of you who've been, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The sodas are the cultural, like, people cook very simple foods,
Yeah.
really delicious foods, but it's basically the same stuff. And it was a piece of getting back to humanity.
Hmm.
So flying back, as I already shared with you, flying back to San Francisco.
Yeah.
I was really tired because I knew we were flying back at 5 o'clock Costa Rica time. We were going to get in at midnight. So I was trying to sleep. And when I couldn't sleep, I kept coming back to the simplicity of life. And then this interview popped into my head a couple of times. I'm like, I know there's going to be compassion and human stuff and things we're going to talk about. I find it such a beautiful juxtaposition to have experienced what I just experienced for a week, both sides of the coin of luxury and simplicity.
And simplicity.
And yet having the same conversation of, when you think about what happened with 9/11, it was such that contrast of high flying New York City life and then devastation.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
Go ahead.
What changed you? I know I kind of asked this earlier, but what's something that changed you for the better, do you think? As you witnessed Michael, his life, his service, his showing up, his passing, what's something that made you a better man?
I mean, knowing Michael made me a better person. Michael helped me grow up. And just my whole relationship with him, I mean, I really felt like when I met him, I was 30, but I still felt like I was a kid who had no experience. And Michael had all this great experience. And I learned so much from him about life, about love, about compassion, about just always wanting to do the right thing. And Michael didn't always do the right thing, but he always wanted to do the right thing. And I think I try to live my life the same way too. Try to be a really good friend to the people in my life, to my family, coworkers, and just try to be an above board person. It's something that he really taught me. Just like be a mensch. Michael was a mensch, and I think he really helped ground me in that way and really see life realistically. I think I mean, I was a struggling actor. And so, I think I gave that up and became a better person for a community, someone who could give back as best as I could, something I hadn't really done before I met Michael. And so his influences on me really affected me that way. And I felt it was really important to share his story, which is another way I wanted to give back.
Was he older than you?
No, he was younger than I am, actually.
Okay, that's kind of what
But
I thought.
he was younger than but he was like a big brother to me. He was taller than I am.
Mm.
And he treated me like a little brother. And I felt younger than him. I felt emotionally younger than him, even though I was physically older, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. No, I totally get it.
Yeah,
Totally get it. I mean, when I came out, because I came out later in life,
I did too.
I was older than most of my circle of friends, yet so many of them had come out when they were teens, early 20s. And it was interesting to see the dynamic play back and forth, Neil,
Yeah.
on how much I learned from them about gay life, early gay life. I was hiding in the closet during the AIDS epidemic.
I was too.
And so you can relate to like,
I
oh,
can
I'm
relate big
witnessing
time.
this,
Yeah.
yet I know who I am internally, but I'm not going to, and I do believe that's part of the reason I stayed in the closet was like I was not mature enough to understand all of it. But I also had the flip side happen once I came out because I was older. I had been in a long-term relationship. I was married for 13 years.
Hmm.
And so there was this flip side of I'm learning from them, but they're also learning from me because they're like, wow, you did a relationship for 13 years. How did you do that? Well, part of it was I was hiding and trying to mask who I really was, but there was wealth to be there. And as soon as you started talking about the deep conversations and things we can learn and how you were learning from Michael, and yet, you're older. And of course, in my mind's going, I think Michael was younger than him, but that's why I wanted to
He
ask the
was.
question.
He was emotionally, but
The
yeah.
beautiful thing I think that is also starting to be missed. And guys, I'm bringing this up because I hear this all the time in our community. We are not having the conversations that we need to have.
Hmm.
And I'm not knocking the younger generation because we were all younger generation, thought we had it all figured out.
Yeah.
Now we're older generation and we're not being appreciated. But appreciation, in my mind, is what you make of it. Just because somebody doesn't appreciate you and doesn't want to have the conversation does not mean you silence your voice. You share how you can in the best way you can,
Yep.
and you invite people into the conversation.
You invite people in, and if they're open to listening and open to reading or whatever, then great. And all you can do, I mean, you can lead them to water.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know,
And it goes for even guys in our own age group. You
yeah,
know, I mean, I'm not knocking anybody. Some are going to take offense to this. That's okay. There's guys living their 62-year-old life like they're 30 something. And I'm not going to knock that. But please don't knock me if I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of just settled. I'm happy being married. Yes, I'm in an open relationship, and there's things you may not like about who I am. But no, I don't have to go to every gay bar. I mean, it was so funny. The final night we were in Tamarindo, I knew there was a gay bar there. I knew it, but I wasn't like going and seeking it out. We're leaving this beautiful, wonderful dinner that we had to celebrate my husband's birthday. The whole family is walking by. I'm like, there it is. That's the gay bar. And of course, my kids were like, let's go in. I'm like, I don't want to go in a gay bar. I'm tired. It's time for dad to go to bed, you know? And a friend of mine said, you didn't even go in? I'm like, no, I didn't need that experience. I had everything around me right here, what I needed. My two girls, my son-in-law, my husband, I had what I needed.
My family's here. I'm fulfilled. I don't need
Right.
a little ego boost or anything like that. I
No,
have
and
it
I
all.
wish our community would start to be, and I have to check myself too, Neil. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I have to check myself sometimes because I could get on a soapbox really quickly about just because I travel doesn't mean I have to go to every goddamn gay bar. You know, hey, if that's what you want, great. I want you to go have that experience. Here's what
Yeah,
I want to go experience.
it's a big MYOB, I think,
Mm-hmm.
frankly.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm not hurting you. I'm not taking food out of your mouth. I only wanted to help and like see if I can contribute. And, if you're open to that, great. And if not, then okay, I can't do anything about that. But I'm here. I'm putting all these things out for you, and my doors are open.
Mm-hmm. And trust the fact that if somebody says MYOB, mind your own business, they're not being jerks.
Mm-mm.
They're just saying, I don't think you need to be in this way. Plain and simple.
No, exactly. Or just sort of like, I'm not what am I how is who I date bothering you? I mean, I don't get that.
Mm-mm.
I mean, I get it, but I don't get it.
But
So
yeah, I mean, there's always okay, I kind of get that, but why is this so important to you? It's like
why is it
the
so
whole
important?
transgender garbage that's going on everywhere. I'm like, how is 1% of the population causing this much energy, effort, and legislation and all of this garbage when they just want to be able to go pee in a restroom that matches their identity, folks?
Exactly.
That's it.
I mean, that's people just saying, look over there, look over here, don't look at
Yeah.
what I'm doing, look
No,
at
don't look
them,
at
look at
me.
them, look at them, don't look at me. Yep.
What are you most proud of about having accomplished this book and chronicled this memoir about Michael?
Well, I'm funny. I mean, I'm not the type of person to go like, hey, look at me. I'm so proud of this great thing. I mean, I'm really glad that I can share Michael's story. I hope more people can read it and just understand what a great guy he is, how he overcame a lot of his obstacles, a lot of the challenges that were in his life. Someone who chose to put his life on the line to help save other people. I'm just glad that I'm proud to have known Michael, and I'm proud to have been lucky enough to be able to share his story and know his story and share it. I mean, I think I'm one of the few people in his life who knew him for most of his life. I mean, I met him when he was still in his 20s and he was 54 when he passed.
Mm,
So almost 30 years we were friends, and I'm glad I'm proud that I can share his story, and that's what I'm most proud of. Yeah.
mm. So glad that you made time to talk to us today.
Rick, thank you so much for your interest and for taking the time to chat with me today. I really appreciate it. And I love the work that you're doing, Rick. Thank
Well,
you so
thank
much
you.
for that.
So, speaking of work, what's next for you? What is the thing that's like, here's Neil's next adventure he'd like to go do? Is there another book you want to write?
There is another book I want to write. I have a lead on a subject
Okay.
whose life is completely different from Michael's. It's a whole different genre and everything. He, again, I think is a little bit nervous about talking about his life, which I completely understand, but I'm going to see if he'll let me fictionalize it. So it's an older gentleman. This guy's in his 80s right now. But he's had a really interesting life, and I would like to document it. If he says no, I've got another one in me too. So there is another book. There's another book there. So
There's a
that
book in
I hope
every
my
there's a book in everybody, just not everybody's going to jump to take that adventure on. Let's just go there.
well, I'm gonna,
Because it
I
is
do
an
want to write a
adventure,
book.
guys.
It
Trust
is
me.
an adventure. I like to
I'm
tell
on book
stories.
3, and it's like book 2 isn't published yet, but book 3, I'm like, okay, well, now we're into like book 2 is possibly going to get published yet this year, and it's a
Oh,
journey. It's a journey.
it's a
Anybody, God
journey.
bless.
It's a lot of work, but like you, I like to tell stories.
Hmm.
So I'm hoping this one comes through. I think it'll be a good one.
That'd
So
be awesome.
yeah.
Well, once again, Neil, thank you for being part of this. If somebody wants to reach out to you, where I think you got a great website, right? The Real Neil Adams, is that
It's read at
Read Neil
readneil.com.
Adams? Okay,
READNEIL is how I spell my
nice.
name. Read Neil Adams can be interpreted a couple of ways, but I mean read the book. Is
Yeah,
how I
read the book, absolutely. And I'm assuming the book is available anywhere books are being sold. You know, the typical
Amazon, Barnes and
Amazon.
Noble, Apple,
Fine.
yep.
Yep.
Anywhere you can get your
Awesome.
books. Yep. So
Very cool. Well, once again, thank you for sharing, being truthful, being of yourself. And guys, please go do a solid and check out the book, buy it, read it. I'm sure you will learn not only about Michael, but I'm pretty sure you will learn something about yourself if you allow yourself to venture into the journey of From the Pile. And happy Pride. We are fully into Pride season at this point, folks, and I am just super excited for what we have lined up. There's lots of interesting conversations that are happening. The next one is quite interesting. We are with a young lady who is very sex positive, and I just hope you guys don't go, oh, well, why are we talking to a woman? This is 40 Plus Gay Men Gay Talk. This is where you learn to have conversations with the right people. And then we have someone who's going to be on who documents his entire life with his partner of, I believe it was 45 years. Think
wow.
about what they have lived through. And then we're going to wrap up with a couple other new ones at the end. But Neil, you kicked us off here, man. So
Happy Pride, everyone.
happy
Thank you
Pride,
so much.
everyone. Go celebrate Pride, because
Celebrate.
if they don't see us celebrating, that gives them all the more reason to believe we don't exist, and we do, and we always will. So
Yes.
happy Pride, everyone. Next week, catch another show. And until then, go out, keep being yourself. No fears, no excuses, and no apologies. Take care, everyone.
That's a wrap for 40 Plus Gay Men, Gay Talk, where size doesn't matter. We drop our bullshit, get over our screwed up fears, make bold moves, and live life without apologies. Don't forget to join us on Facebook at 40 Plus Gay Men, Gay Talk, where the conversations continue.